I metaphorically went in front of that mantelpiece that I've been collecting all these spiritual things, from crystals to Reiki to Jesus to I remember being super angry and kind of saying, what the hell is all this about? And I just swiped the whole lot metaphorically off the mantelpiece, and then everything just crumbled to dust. All those items, those trophies and things that I had there, except for one, and that was that trophy from when I got saved. And it fell to the floor like with a clankering sound. It was like a solid thing. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I prayed, and I remember sitting out here and praying for faith, because I didn't know what to do with this trophy that I'd gotten when I was 17. I had no clue what this was about, and that's the only thing that lasted. Everything else just went up in smoke and dust, but this one was holding. And I prayed about it, and then suddenly I came to understand that it wasn't a trophy at all. It was actually a suit of armor. I was supposed to wear it. I was supposed to be it. So we had a beautiful cruise that we did. It was just super powerful. And on this trip, Cengiz and I fell in love, and shortly after this trip, we got engaged, and we got married, and 6 months after we got married, we fell pregnant. We were delighted. We lived the dream. We were living in Marmaris. We had a belly full of twins. Financially, we were safe. Life was just amazing. I gave birth to Jonathan and Dennis. And within a day or two, we realized that there was something majorly not right with Dennis. And I went upstairs to see Dennis for the first time after he'd left the hospital in Marmaris. And I wasn't allowed to go in to him. There was this big glass panel. And this young doctor, bless him, he lifted up my little boy, pitch dark hair. And I was so horrified because he had these black stitches down the front of his tummy, and he looked like a badly stitched up rag doll with all these pipes and things attached to him. And I collapsed right there and then. I remember touching the glass, and I just wanted to touch him. Dennis and I, we were at the hospital, and we had this calendar countdown. Cengiz and Jonathan went to live in Turkey, and red marks on the calendar. And I used to talk to, at that stage, Dennis was 11 months old. He was tiny. He only weighed 4 kilos. I was sitting and I was making a friendship bracelet and I showed Dennis the the threads, and I said, choose one. He was sitting in his chair and sort of propped up, and he pointed to a yellow and he pointed to a blue, and then I made a joke to him, and I said, the orange and blue, well, yellow and blue is Fenerbahce. That's not your dad's soccer club. Your dad's soccer club is Beşiktaş. That's black and white. And I was just joking with my little 11-month-old. And next thing, the phone rings. And I thought it was Cengiz checking in to say we're at the airport. And I hear this young girl's voice. Cengiz and Jonathan were lost. And she said that word in Turkish. She just said, we lost them. And I said, what do you mean we lost them? I didn't understand. So Cengiz had died at the accident, and Jonathan had died on the way to the hospital in the ambulance. That echo of we lost him, I kind of, those days we had still phone receivers that were on a cord, and I just dropped the receiver and I just screamed. I had nothing else but just a scream, and all I could see was Dennis sitting over there, and I saw people run into my little room, and they were all, what's going on? And I said, we lost him. And it was like this hurricane around me, and Dennis and I were in the eye of the hurricane. It was just still where we were, but I couldn't reach the people outside of hurricane. There was a couple of days just after that where I was looking for a place to hang myself. I had the tree. I was looking for rope in the hospital that I was in. I was going to hang myself in that tree because I wasn't going to be able to do this. And I remember sitting in the room and looking at Dennis, and Dennis with his big eyes smiled at me, and I said, I can't do this to Dennis because I'll make him an orphan. And I promised him that I won't hurt myself. So I prepared my life again. I kind of started getting busy. And suddenly I get this urge, and I have to run upstairs. I have to get upstairs, and I take my little bagel thing that I had, and I ran upstairs, and I pushed the lift button, and I go upstairs to be with Dennis. And I rush in, and there he's lying, and he's smiling at me. He had big, big black eyes, huge eyes. I mean, they were beautiful. And he smiled at me. And then I hear the oxygen monitor beeping, beep, 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 beep. I realized that Dennis couldn't join his brother because I've made a promise to him. And I said to him, I promise you, I won't hurt myself, you can go. And 10 minutes later he closed his eyes and he smiled for the last time. And he joined his brother. And everything stopped. The panic, everything just stopped. And I was so empty and so... There was nothing left of me. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a wife. I didn't have a job. There was nothing. I had nothing to hold on to. So I remember the prayer that I prayed for Dennis when I was playing the recorder for him was continuously saying, Lord God, either take him or heal him, because I can't do this journey by myself. Obviously hoping for miraculous healing and not the taking part. So I had these very confusing moments that I've got not much memory of, and then I've got this very sort of vivid being a teenager helping mom in the kitchen, you know, being very, very clear about things. But there's one particular dream, it was or experience, where this amazing, kind man used to wake me up very gently every night for multitude of nights. He used to take me by my arm, and he always used to be on the right hand side, just out of my field of vision. He used to be right there, and he used to take me, and we used to go to this beautiful bronzen golden chamber or room of some sort, and I spent time with my grown-up boys in that chamber. And we had talks and we had discussions and we had, I can't remember what we talked about, but the whole night through we would have talks, and they were beautiful. They were in their prime, they're sort of 22, 23-year-old, stunning bodies, sort of tan colors and Mediterranean kind of dark eyes, beautiful Greek god looking kind of guys. And I used to chat with them like night after night, and every night he would come and he would take me by the arm again, and we would go back to my bed, and then I would wake up in the morning. And then the one day this man came and he took me again, and on our way to there, and it's kind of like a floaty way, like we didn't walk, we kind of floated there. He said, tonight's it's the last time tonight, and you've got to say goodbye. And I went there and we had our last goodbye, and it was a peaceful goodbye. There was no hurricane, there was no screaming, there was no panic, there was no doctors. It was just the most loving and beautiful way to say goodbye without feeling lost or forlorn. And then I moved back to Cape Town, because Cape Town is where I come from. And I started my life here again. And I met a young man with blonde, long hair, and I think we fell in love. Him and I, we were like two teenagers, and we fell pregnant within like 6 months of knowing each other. He had just lost his dad, probably about a year or so beforehand, so more or less the same time I lost my family. So I think our history held us together quite a bit. And him and I, we started a new life. We had our son Dylan, and I remember Dylan turning 1 year old and me thinking, I've made it to the first birthday. Then we had Alex 4 years later. We bought a house, he started his business, I was a housewife, and life was good. I saw Alex trying to get up off the floor, and the way he got up off the floor reminded me of something that a professor, when I was doing pediatric nursing, had told us about a diagnosis of a particular condition. And I thought, oh, that looks familiar. So I said, okay, let's have that investigated. And it took about a few months, but he was eventually diagnosed with congenital muscular dystrophy. And the doctors at Red Cross told us that at some stage his weight ratio to what his muscles can bear will be the wrong way, and he will not be able to weight bear at some stage. I was on autopilot. I was functioning, doing. I went from hospital to physiotherapist to riding for the disabled to therapeutic swimming. I was super mom. I just did everything that you had to do in order to make sure that this child was going to be okay. 2008, the big thingy came, depression. Our debt on our house was huge. My husband and I, we kind of coped in ways that didn't pull us towards each other, but started separating us. But looking back, it feels that we were desperately trying to cope, and we were just desperately trying to live life with tools that were inefficient. Eventually, we divorced, and I was left with a minus 2 million rand bond, and it was just the boys and me. But I kind of was standing here in this house, not knowing what to do, bank knocking on my door. I fell apart completely. And then my physical symptoms were quite bad, and I called the doctor, and she actually came to me, the doctor, and she took one look at me and she said, do you have a psychologist? She said, you have 3 options. We try and do this by ourselves, you take medication, or you have yourself admitted. I spent, I think it was 3 weeks in the clinic. The first thing they did is they put me to sleep, literally, just drugged me so that I would sleep. And then I went to groups which didn't mean anything to me. I didn't need those groups, I was fine. I just needed to sleep. And I remember sitting in one of the groups about anger management, I think, or self-esteem. They all have these fancy names. And there was this list a tick list of being in an abusive relationship. And I looked at the tick list, and as I was looking through at that tick list, I had to tick each one of them, except for the physical, like hitting. But the way we had spoken to each other, how we dealt with money, how we dealt with emotions, I realized that I had been in an abusive relationship. It was a very slow healing. It wasn't a light bulb went off and I kind of knew how things are going to be from now on. I clawed myself out of this very dark space where I didn't really, it's like Alice in Wonderland. You don't know where top is, you don't know where bottom is, you don't know what is real, you don't know what love is, you don't know what hate is. Everything is just so confusing. So while I was going through the clinic healing process, I kind of touched base with my faith. What is my faith? And I started learning about the Bible, and I started getting more involved in the church and really learning more about what Jesus did for us and what it meant to wear the armor of God and what it's actually all about. And then slowly but surely life started making sense again. You know, all the other stuff confused me more, but this salvation, as I now know what it's called, made me be able to stand in my life and have hope and grow from it, and it suddenly was easier to carry. You know, all the drama, the death, the hardship, the Alex's ongoing struggle with his own physical body, Dylan's struggle with having a brother that is disabled, our marital issues, all those suddenly were okay because I had this armor on. I had the suit of armor that God has given me. And I remember sitting here in this lounge, and the couch was placed in a different way, and I was looking out into my garden. And it was a happy day. It was a sunny day like this, and I was happy. And there was this person standing in my garden. I'm like, who's this person? And I instantly knew it was Jesus. And he had this white garb on, and he smiled at me. And I said to him, why are you smiling now that things are okay? Why are you here now? You know, where were you when all the shit was coming down? And as I asked him that question, I instantaneously knew that he'd been next to me every step of the way. That he was the reason that I knew about the diagnosis thing for Alex. He was the guy that told me to go and run upstairs because Dennis is going to die. And he had been next to me all the time. Just because I wasn't part of his life anymore didn't mean that he wasn't part of my life anymore. And when I saw him there, I realized that he had carried me. He was the peace in the eye of the hurricane. You know, he was, when everything twisted and turned and was so grotesque in my life, he was the one who stopped the steering wheel from going over the cliff many times when I wanted to break Dennis's promise. He's always been there next to me, and I cannot deny any longer that he is why I'm still sitting here. Prayer was always very close. I always prayed when things were troubling. I always prayed when there was another drama happening. I used to get angry at God because I said to God, you know, whenever I put my head out, it feels like you're putting your thumb down on my head again and it's like squishing me down. And I just can't catch a break. You know, every time I start a life, it falls apart again. While I was in the clinic, I also, obviously, spiritualness is quite important, and I started thinking, what is my spirituality? You know, I had all these thoughts about, yes, I'm a Christian, always have been a Christian, never doubted the fact that I was a Christian, but no idea what a Christian actually is. No idea. I knew I wasn't a Muslim, or I wasn't a Jew, and I wasn't a Hindu, but I was a Christian, but I didn't understand what that really meant. What is faith? I remember just after my divorce, and I was just starting to practice. I just opened my first rooms, and I got a phone call from Absa Bank. And the guy said, Mrs. Nettel, we've done everything we can for you. If you don't come up with X amount, we will have to take your house from you. And the bank, I have to be very honest, they were very good to me during that time. They really pulled out, the people in the bank pulled out all the stops to help me keep the house. But that phone call, I remember putting down the phone, closing the door, and just sitting down on the floor and sobbing, and just saying, what else? What else, God? I've got nothing left to give. If you take this house away from me, I don't have a place to sleep. What do you want from me? Because I was working so hard to do the right thing, to do life responsibly this time around. And it wasn't working. And now I was gonna lose my house. And I remember going home, and we didn't have food. I felt like there is nowhere out. I felt like a trapped rat, and I woke up with a very bad migraine. And I sat outside, and I kind of gently banged my head against the wall because it was so sore. And I said, God, just at least take the freaking headache away. If nothing else, just take the headache away. And the headache subsided. And I was like, whoa. And then I just I said to God, I said, give me a bit of faith. Give me faith so that I know that I'm going to be okay. Just grow the faith for me, because I don't have it. And over time, I got little lessons of faith. Because whenever, a couple of weeks later or a couple of days later, I don't know, I got a phone call that the bank had found another solution for me. I got a phone call that somebody wanted to drop off some food for me. It's just little places where God showed me that if I have faith, things will be okay. If I have enough faith, and all I need is just to ask for faith and things will start coming right. And they did. Over time, slowly but surely, I learned to believe. I grew to believe that we will be okay. We will be really doing okay as long as we have hope and faith, as long as we don't give up on that. And God, Jesus, just provided on an ongoing basis. I remember times in my center when I started my center and the maths didn't add up with how many clients I saw and how many bills I had to pay. It didn't add up, but I managed to pay the bills. 6 years later, I'm still going. So there's these miracles that are happening when you have faith, and they're not flamboyant miracles. They're not things like suddenly Alex can walk. Often I pray for Alex to get up and walk, but that doesn't happen. But all the other little miracles happen. All the other little things, to the point that now this house I own outright. 5 years ago, it was a very, very dark place where I was going to lose everything. And now I'm not out of the waters, what do you call it? I'm not out of it yet, but I can see that it's moving. You know, when you're in the dark place, because I still visit that place every now and again. It's not like it's forever gone. And what I tell myself, my mom told me that years ago. She said, start with the inner circle. Get up and brush your teeth. And then make your bed. And then maybe make yourself a cup of coffee. That's all that it takes. And then slowly allow yourself to consider the possibility that there is a next moment. We live in a world that is catastrophic. But we are spiritual beings, and we've been given a path to help us survive and better this chaotic world. And I believe Jesus is that path. I believe the man who took me to my boys when they had died was Jesus himself. He takes you. And if you can believe in a being like Jesus that takes your hand when you're in your darkest place, you've got nothing to worry about. The darkness that I felt was believing that I was alone, that I had to go through it by myself. And when I started to realize that I wasn't alone, that's when things started to get better. And that's where the faith kind of started growing. Faith is knowing that you're not alone. Faith is knowing that you are not struggling on your own here. And nobody going through a dark place is going through it alone. You might think you're on your own, but you're never alone, ever. As dark as my life has been, I'm eternally grateful for every moment of my life, because I know for a fact that I wouldn't be the person that I am today were it not for all those experiences that I've had. I feel immensely honored to have been on the deathbed of my son, to be able to say that I've come out on the other side, and that my shouting at God, you better make this worth something, it has become worth something. Because of all of this, I can sit with clients and hold them, and their stories are valuable to me, and I can hold them on a level that they don't understand, but I know. I can feel it. I know what it's like to be in the darkness. I know what it's like to experience loss. I know what it's like to feel all alone. I have that understanding, and with my studies and stuff, I obviously created a career out of it for myself, but ultimately I sit with my clients because of who I am, not because of what I studied. I sit with them because I honor their story, and I like to usher them into the place of hopefulness where they know that they can do life again.